Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are looking at Psalm 61. Starts off, hear my cry, hear my prayer. And why does David, the psalmist, have this expectation? Well, because the Lord has told him, I will listen to your prayers. Bring them to me. And we should have that same understanding. God wants to hear your prayers. He wants to hear about the things you need help with. The other thing is that part of the reason for this is that the Lord He's our God, and we are His children, and He wants to hear from us in that way. Now, He goes on to say, from the ends of the earth I call to you. And you think about when you're driving and you're like, man, we were at the end of the world, right? You're out in the middle of nowhere. And that's sort of what this phrase means here. I'm in the middle of nowhere, but not necessarily physically, but in a spiritual sense, in an emotional sense. I'm like lost in nowhere land, and my heart is fainting. I'm disheartened. I'm overwhelmed, and I'm crying out to you, Lord. So lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Well, what's the rock? In so much of the Psalms, it's God Himself, and God is certainly higher than where I am. And perhaps if I'm up with God, I'll get a better perspective on whatever my problems are. I'll see them from God's vantage point. He says in verse 3, for you have been my refuge. You've been my strong tower, my fortress. And the thing is for God to be our refuge, for Him to be our fortress, we have to surrender our efforts to try to do this all on our own and rely upon God. He goes on to say, I long to dwell in your tent forever. And do we long to dwell with God? And forget forever. How about just in the next minute and then throughout the day? And maybe then if we would have that longing, it would happen all the time. And to stay, he talks about dwelling in the shelter of your wings, to stay close to God under His wings. And I thought about how, if you're a little chick underneath a mother hen's wings, it's probably hot and humid underneath there. You might not want to stay there. And so often we are under the protection of God. We think, oh, I'm good. I'm going to go out there and do this on my own. And we leave the protection of God to take on the world by ourselves. We need to stay close to God. He says in verse 5, he says, for you, God, he's talking directly to God. You, God, are acting. You, God, give me a legacy, a heritage of those who have faith in you, those who have the legacy of faith, and those who fear your name, who revere God. That's what I want my legacy to be, David is saying. And he goes on, so Lord, increase the days of your king's life and his years for many generations, asking the Lord to bless his leader, right? And verse 7, may the leader always be enthroned in God's presence. May the leader operate out of God's guidance. And shouldn't that be our prayer for every elected leader that we have? Shouldn't it be the prayer we have for the leaders in our business, in our homes? And he says, appoint your love and faithfulness to protect him. When we think about protection, we don't think about love and faithfulness being a wall of protection. But God is faithful, and He protects us. So we are called, as it says in verse 9, to sing to Him, to worship Him every day, and to walk in His ways. Thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.